You had it on doing the. Really? Oh, I didn't think you did. Oh, I didn't think you did. I didn't remember seeing it on. I told you a story about me in socks, right? You heard that story, right? Yeah. I'm wearing socks. It's the only time I ever wear socks. Wear flip-flops all the time if I can get away with it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Lynn Haven City Commission. I'd like to welcome you all here. And I'm just going to take a chance and hope he'll say yes. Mr. Walker, would you please lead us in an invocation this evening as we begin? Could I call on you to do that? I thank you so much. Would you please stand, ladies and gentlemen?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I thank you so much for offering the invocation. I generally ask people in advance, and I'm sure I will pay for that at some point. Moving on to the next order of business is the mayor's report, and I have not too long of a report this evening, but the biggest thing I'd like to talk to you about is that I did go on June the 21st over to Chipley. That was the day of that rainstorm, actually, but I was determined not to miss the appointment because it had been 60 days in the planning, but met with our District 3 Secretary for FDOT, Mr. Philip Gaynor. He and several of his colleagues met with me, and also Chris Foreman, who is our city engineer, and Mr. Schubert, our city manager, went with me because I had some, I said Foreman again. I guess I'm thinking about you being a fighter, Chris. Forehand, I just can't get it straight. Chris Forehand and Joel Schubert went with me, and we had quite a productive discussion, I thought. I went for several reasons, and I had outlined these before I went to the secretary, but my biggest concern is one of public safety here in Lynn Haven. Many of you probably know as you come, if you're coming from north to south across the Bailey Bridge, or for that matter going south to north, we have a very busy intersection now with Porter Park, with all the people with their boats. We have Simply Seafood, we have Po Folks, we have Ace Hardware, and we have a convenience store all right there at 5th and 77. And we've already had accidents, we've already had some near accidents, and with no fault to our police department, because traffic control is very undermanned in Lynn Haven, as we've talked about with the police chief. But we do, if you've ever just sat at that intersection and watched the speed with which people come off the bridge, it's just frightening. And so I was talking with the secretary about the possibility of a traffic signal there. And of course, he began to tell me about how we would have to do a study. And you all know, who know me well, how I have no patience with studies. The wheels of government move too slowly for me many times. But was that? Thank you. And a second down at the end. Thank you, Commissioner Russell. But But anyway, what he did say was that, yes, we could begin looking at it, and that we could expect it to take up to 2 years' time for that to happen. The cost for a signal like that would be taken in by the state, not the city, but it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 by the time we get through with the studies, the traffic studies, and the installation of the signal, the right-of-way, all those things that go along with it. But we did get the wheels started, so I just want to let you know that. I did also speak with them about the 390 progress, because if you're like me, if you've been to a lot of these meetings with FDOT about the progress of 390, the 4-laning, the 6-laning, or the not laning, whatever it is, we get sort of a different story every time. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way, it's just that things keep changing. And so in speaking with him, they have promised us a summary in writing, which we can, make public and share, of where we are now with this widening process. And my understanding, based on the conversation we had the other day, is that there are currently delays from 23rd to Baldwin with the widening because of some private businesses there who have some current grievances and possibly legal action about right-of-way, about water ponds, lakes that are being interfered with, that kind of thing. The Baldwin to Jinx part seems to be moving on track, and then the Jinx to 77, which will most impact Lynn Haven, which coming through our intersection where the CVS and the Walgreens are. Right now, that will not begin until summer of 2018, which means that it will not be included in our October fiscal year 17-18 budgeting for Lynn Haven. So, it's still kind of in the future. And then east of 77, picking up, going towards North Bay Haven and Highway 231, that is really delayed because they're talking about, right now the only funding they have is for the, I've got the acronym wrong, PG&E, is that correct? Yes, PG&E, I believe. Thank you. PE&G, anyway. PD&E, thank you. Study, that is the engineering part of it, and some other items that will be taking place. The funding is in place for that, but will not begin until 2019. And because some other projects have been placed in front of it, they don't have money in place right now for the right-of-way or other issues going on. So it looks like there's not a clear picture yet. We're waiting on that summary, and then I do plan to go and talk with, I've had an invitation to speak with Senator Gaynor and some of our other representatives to talk some more. So I'll be following up with that. And then finally, during that meeting, we began a permitting application because, as you know, we have our golf cart ordinance now in Lynn Haven. We began a permitting study for where we can put crossings on the state roads and the county roads. And Chris was able to help with that by starting the permitting process and the study to see where these crossings should be and where they'll most cause the connectivity of our different subdivisions. In other words, if you were at the Hammocks, or if you're all the way over near North Shore, or if you're at the Country Club, if you're in the Old West Side District, all the ways that all those can be connected so that you could eventually get from my house to maybe over to the Kane Griffin Park by using the crossings, or if you were over at the Hammocks, that you could eventually get to Kensall Park by using the appropriate. It's very interesting and intricate, and Mr. Forehand's done quite a bit of work already working on that. Did you have anything that you wanted to say to that this evening, Mr. Forehand, about what you're doing? Okay, you're good on that. But we'll be presenting some maps and some information about that as we move forward. We're just starting that permitting process. And then I spent time during this past week with some members of the water department learning about, just trying to learn more about the stormwater and some of the things that we're doing in the city, so that when I'm at the various conferences and having an opportunity to speak with those who have authority to help us with federal grant funding information, that I have the right questions to ask. So I've been learning about lift stations this week from Chuck over at the water department. That was quite interesting. And then I've also spent some time with Daryl at sanitation, and Ronnie and Bobby Baker at Public Works. And I had a really interesting time speaking with all of them. Wanted to commend Maria Stout-Tate and her staff for the great job they did with the Hermit Crab Festival on the 17th of June. We are very proud to have offered that kid-friendly, family-friendly activity out there, and it was all day long into the evening, and they really worked hard to make that a success for Lynn Haven. So that's all I have, and so I would now go to the Commissioner's report, and whoops, that's not all I have. Also, Leisure Services, we wanted to commend them for all the work they're doing for the 4th of July celebration in Lynn Haven that's coming up, and I encourage everybody to attend that. It's all day long into the evening, and lots of work goes into that. We just want to thank all of the city workers who are working so hard, Leisure Services and the police department who will be there, and our public works who are working really hard to get the city cleaned up and in beautiful shape as everybody comes to visit us. So, Commissioner Russell, do you have a report?
Yes, ma'am. I just have a couple of things. During the campaign, I met with several people that had problems, and one of the ladies that I met with was Mrs. Renfro, and the sidewalk next to her house had been tore up pretty bad, and I got her in touch with Bobby Baker, and I just want to let her know that Bobby took care of the issue, and the city's got a new sidewalk there, and she's really happy. After the storm, Joe Schubert and I rode around and assessed what happened with the city and stopped and talked to a few people. Reverend Tracy Roberts lives over at the corner of Virginia and 10th, and he had some flooding issues, and again, Bobby Baker's guys have already taken care of it. They've already cleaned out the culvert. He thinks he's going to have to replace part of it, but I commend Public Works for jumping on things like they do when we have issues, and I really appreciate it. The last one we met with was a Mrs. Young in the country club, and she ended up having to sandbag her house, and she was somewhat upset with the whole situation, and we informed her and explained to her what the issues were, and let her know that the stormwater in this country club actually belongs to the HOA. It doesn't belong to the city of Lynn Haven. So she was going to address that with the HOA president and straighten that out. And lastly, I got an email from a couple of people that had issues with the liquor ordinance that we passed in the last month. Ahmed Harim, who owns the gas station at 5th Street, and Ms. Patel, who owns the gas station at 12th. Talked to Ahmed over the phone and met with Ms. Patel, and explained to them, the process that we went through, and explained to them that we had no complaints. Nobody came up during any of the commission meetings about this. So we passed it assuming that the city was on board. I also explained to her my reasons for voting for it was that I'm a proponent of growth, controlled growth, and less government regulations. So by us mirroring the state regulation, it's less headaches for business owners. So that's all I've got, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Tender?
Yes. I had a resident that had come to me about a tree that was located in the community cemetery, fallen into the bayou, and they couldn't get through with their boat. And I'm proud to say that Bobby Baker took care of that, and that tree is gone. And thank you very much for that quick response. They called me today. They were so excited. And they were just shocked, and they were thrilled. I also met with a family down in Carolina regarding the ditch on 6th Street on the side of their property. They've had a number of people fall in the ditch when they've gotten out of their car, and they're very concerned somebody's going to get hurt. He also has a problem with the ditch. It's been dug so deep that the pipes are sitting about 10 inches higher than the water, so it never drains. They just have standing water there all the time, and I think Bobby's on that too. I did meet with Mr. Schubert, our city manager, regarding a resolution to eliminate vendors from donating large sums of money to the city. After being made aware of certain practices, I've also asked the city manager for 3 separate forensic audits to be conducted on different departments in the city. I was also contacted 3 times in one night about a dog on Missouri Avenue. Our police department went out twice, and the next day animal control went out, and I haven't heard a thing since, so that's good news. I don't know what happened to the dog, if it's still living there or if they've taken it away, but they've stopped calling me. Also had a resident contact me regarding a noisy neighbor, and as it turns out, they're moving this weekend, so the neighborhood will quiet down. And I've also asked the city manager about a workshop or a way for us to discuss the cost of city employees driving vehicles back and forth to work. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnes?
Yes, last Wednesday, I attended the ethics training that we had here in the chambers, and that was a very good training. Also, I've talked with the city manager about this, but I know Channel 13 does a sponsorship of this, but I think we need to hold the paper shredding, the document shredding here in Lynn Haven. I think that you can't be too safe in trying to protect the identity of yourself. And I think that would be a pretty good program if the city would sponsor that. And so I would kind of like to get feet, not tonight, but really think about that and perhaps put it on the next agenda. The other thing is, as most of you know, I've become the assistant principal out at Arnold High School. And one of the things that I've noticed out on the beach is the number of baseball teams that come into Panama City Beach during this time of year. It's great to see those teams come in. It brings a boost to the economy in Panama City Beach. And so I want us to look at our own sports complex, get some conceptual drawings, is putting some additional fields, doing some other things out there. And as these people are coming off of Highway 231, they could stop here in Lynn Haven, and they could play their baseball games here. They could help boost the economy here in Lynn Haven. I think there are many benefits out there to the sports complex that we're not really taking advantage of, and so I really want us to look at that. The other thing is I will be out of town the week of 4th of July. My wife is having some medical issues, so I'll be with her during that time. And then I'll be on vacation July the 18th through the 22nd. So that is my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mayor. Also attended the Hermit Crab Festival. Really want to thank the staff. It's very hot out there. Luckily, we didn't get any rain, but they really work really hard out there to put that on. And it's a great event. And might be a little early to suggest this, but I was going to maybe think, I've watched a couple of the hermit crab races, and if you haven't seen that, it's pretty interesting. But I think maybe an add-on next year, maybe we could do inter-department competition. And I would compete with my fellow commissioners, and I'm sure my crab would win. But just putting that out there, so I just some kind of something to stir it up, but in the departments. Just a thought on that. But I really appreciate that festival, and they did a great job. And the sculpting, it was amazing again this year. TPO meeting tomorrow. Before the TPO meeting, I'm on the advertising committee for the trolleys. So if anyone has any suggestions, comments, concerns about advertising on the trolleys, this will probably be the last chance. We'll have that meeting before the TPO meeting, and then go before the TPO board to make our suggestions and put out an RFP. Look forward to serving with the mayor on the TPO starting tomorrow. And if you don't like studies, I'm slow moving. Get ready. We have a long range plan that's like 50 years out there. Then let's see. Worked on the applicants. We had some great applicants. Really appreciate city staff doing their part in all that. It's just a long process, and we had a great workshop today. And I really wanted to mention that. I think we had a great workshop. I think we got a good list of people to interview. Lastly, had the ethics training and learned something every year. And really want to say thank you to Rob's firm for putting that on for not only us, but people come from all over for that. And there's no charge on that. So it's one of the rare opportunities to ask a lawyer a question for free. So definitely like taking advantage of that. So asked him all kind of questions, by the way. Just kidding. Anyway, thank you, Mayor.
And I want to piggyback on that. Every year, the Florida legislature passed a law that every year all elected officials have to have 3 hours of ethics training. So this is something this is continuing education that we have to do to stay in compliance with the law. So, and you learn a lot, so it was a good class.
Thank you. And I had just left out a couple of things that I wanted to mention, and I'll go back also. The crab races, I think that's a great idea, if I may, Commissioner Friend. They even had an event this year that was a little different. It was called BYOC, Bring Your Own Crab to the Race, which I thought was really cool because some of the children last year had their own crabs that they brought that were really large and kind of outdid the polished crabs. So anyway, it should be fun. And as far as the ethics training, I did want to mention that I was absent from that because I was at FDOT meeting and so was not at the one here, but will be complying with that at the Florida League of Cities meeting in August when I go in Orlando. I attend it there. So it is interesting, and we learn a lot about city government as well as state government at those meetings. At this time, I'd like to call on our city manager for his report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick update on a few items. The roadway pavement rehab, the 10 miles, the first 10 miles, we are going to close on the loan tomorrow. And also, Bobby and Public Works and Utilities have been working well with an engineer, our other city engineer, as far as the advertising of the design build team. That's going to be a little different process for this commission. It's similar to what the county and some of the other municipalities are going to. I believe it's going to be a process that'll be fruitful, a lot more efficient. It'll happen more expeditiously, and I think you're going to have going into a process where change orders are virtually non-existent. So, but it is a new process. I will probably bring that process to the next commission meeting to familiarize you with that, or be sending an email. But I wanted to let you know that's going to be advertised this week. It'll close July 20th. I will not be here, but I want to make sure you have the information, you're comfortable. This process also allows you to change throughout the process. So there's a lot of benefits to it. I want to be sure that you're comfortable with it before it comes back around. But again, the loan is closing on that tomorrow. We should have pavement hitting the streets within 3-4 months max, I would think. Commercial trash, this kind of caught me by surprise. I got a letter last week from the school board that they had bid the commercial trash pickup for all the schools in the county, including municipalities. What this means for us is the 4 or 5 schools, the non-charter schools, they're going to have their own contract. So the commercial trash that we just bid out, we're going to lose 5 or 6 pretty large accounts. I had staff run the numbers on it. It's a $17,000 annual loss. But the good news is we're saving upwards of 100. So now we're going to save 80, 85. But I wanted to let you know about that. Moby mats. I mentioned this a few months ago. The Moby mats came in. These are the mats that you see. The county's been pretty successful in some other cities for ADA compliance as far as someone in a wheelchair or another type vehicle. Leisure Services ordered these a month or so ago. We're planning on putting those out next Friday. So you'll see ADA or access with those folks that are in wheelchairs or other motorized vehicles. They can actually go out on the beach. So we're excited about that. And a personnel policy. I sent a personnel policy. Ours is very dated. I think it's upwards of 20 years old. It's in dire need. I vetted that with the commission, going to send it out to the staff as well for feedback, but I think that should come in front of the commission in August. There are a couple probably pretty tough decisions to make in there, and there's a lot. Most of it's just updates so we can port to current laws, federal laws, state laws, etc., but there are some decisions to be made there. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was the commission extended an invite to Miss Libby Tennell, and she did accept to be the Grand Marshal of the parade next week, so we're very proud to have her. She always comes up when she speaks and introduces herself as the oldest living resident. I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure it is, but we're certainly proud to have you representing and as a citizen. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move on at this time to our consent agenda, and actually it just consists of item number 7 for this meeting, and that is to approve the minutes from the last regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or changes for the minutes from the last meeting. Any questions or discussion from the public? Okay, at this time, Mr. Schubert, if you would please call the roll.
Commissioner Russell,
Yes.
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, and so the consent agenda stands approved. Moving on to old business, there is none to discuss at this meeting, so we'll move right along to new business. Item number 8 is the first reading of Ordinance 1036, which is the firefighters' retirement system. There'll be no action required on this, but simply a first reading of the ordinance. Mr. Schubert, if you could please read that for us.
An ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven amending Chapter 50, Personnel, Article 4, Firefighters Retirement System of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lynn Haven, amending Section 50-124, Finances and Fund Management, amending Section 50-149, Supplemental Benefit Components for Special Benefits, Chapter 175, Share Accounts, providing for severability of provisions, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Okay, that is just a first reading. So moving on to item number 9. This is Resolution 2017-06-687. This resolution, if passed, it would establish a policy for handling gifts, contributions, donations, or honoraria given to the city. Mr. Schubert, would you like to read the resolution, please?
Yes. A resolution of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, establishing a policy for handling gifts, contributions, donations of honoraria given to the city, providing for City Commission approval prior to accepting such gifts unless an exception applies, providing for exceptions, and providing for an immediate effective date.
Okay, so this resolution would require a motion and a second for discussion and possible action. So is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Just for a point of discussion, can the mayor second a motion or not? Not? Okay, I just wanted to give the commissioner an opportunity for discussion. So just by a motion and a second is not, approving it. It's just giving her an opportunity. I think Commissioner Tender had wanted to bring this resolution forward. So is there a second for her motion for the sake of discussion? And that motion would fail for lack of a second. Okay, so moving on then to item number 10, which will be discussion and possible action regarding appointment to the WFRPC board. And this is included in the packet. Sorry, I'm trying to turn to this. This is the West Florida Regional Planning Council, and at this time, discussion and possible action regarding an appointment of a member of this board to be the representative to the WFRPC board. So is there a motion?
Mayor, I'd move that we appoint you as the representative. I think Commissioner Ashbrook had done that before in the past.
Okay. So is there is there a second? Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Russell. There's a motion and a second to appoint the mayor to another council. Is there any discussion from the board, or if there's someone else who would love to do it, please feel free to supersede me. No.
I would just mention, take the opportunity, if you will, Mayor, just mention that West Florida Regional Planning Council is the staff for the TPO. So they're in Pensacola, and they do a really, really good job for the TPO, Bay County TPO. They staff several TPOs across the state and also Alabama. So this is a very important role to support them in what they do to support the TPOs.
Okay. Thank you very much for that information. So is there any question or discussion from the board? There's been a motion and a second. Any question, objection, or anything from the audience for your mayor to represent you on this Western Regional Council? There appears to be none. Mr. Schubert, if you would please call the roll.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, thank you. And I will try to do a good job with that. And I'm going to my first TPO meeting tomorrow as well, so I'm looking forward to that as well. Moving on to number 11, discussion and possible action regarding a cruise-in on Florida Avenue as a fall special event. And this is something that I did bring forward. I would just say that what it's about, and then leave it up to you if you'd like to make a motion or a second. There's been, if you've followed the news, a great deal of discussion on some of the events in Panama City and some of the other cities, and there are many, many, many members of our old car clubs in Panama City and the beach and other areas who enjoy bringing their automobiles as a point of interest to citizens. And so they approached me as wanting Lynn Haven as a place to do this event, and it is a popular, family-friendly event. They prefer no alcohol be served at the event. One of the reasons, just because of, they don't want damage to their cars, and they want children to feel, very comfortable all around the area. So it is indeed a very family-friendly event. And what they require of the city, basically, would be that we give them a place, and they requested Florida Avenue that be blocked off. They wanted sort of old-time 50s, 60s soda shop music playing so that people could dance and sing along as they were, kind of reliving this. And then some food vendors, like maybe ice cream shops, soda shop kind of atmosphere for this event. The date that they were looking at would be September the 30th. And Maria Stout-Tate, the Leisure Services Director, was kind enough to come up with sort of a budget of what it would cost if the city paid for it. It's right around $6,000, and that's covering the police being there and the porta potties and the band and the music and the other details. We would recoup some of that through food vending, and but anyway, there is also some interest by a couple people who've indicated they might like to help to sponsor it in some way, but that's not nailed down. So if there were any action taken tonight, that's the budget that we'd be looking at. And I just add with just one comment that I don't think we can have too many family-friendly events right here in Lynn Haven that keeps people within our community spending money here, having a great time, and so forth. So that's all I have to say about it, unless if somebody would like to make a motion or a second or even ask questions.
I'll move approval.
Second.
So there is a motion on the floor for approval and a second. Are there any questions or discussion from the board?
Couple of questions. The car club is not looking to make money off this, right? It's just a function they want to have.
Exactly. They would not charge anything to come or anything. They just need those things around them to attract people to come. They're just wanting to show off their cars.
And the second thing is, has anybody talked to the people of Florida Avenue to make sure that they're okay with having all these functions on the road?
I have spoken to a couple of the people there, like Roberts Hall, and I have not spoken with Commissioner Tender because this was coming up tonight on the board, and I couldn't speak with her about it. But and she does have a business on Florida. And I've also, I have some plans to contact the motorsports complex to see if he might want to participate in some other ways as well. So,
thank you.
Mayor, I'd just like to use the opportunity to say that I love events. I especially love the family-friendly events. I just, as we continue to have more and more events, I know we talked about this it's been at least a couple of years maybe, but do we have are we putting in place any way or mechanism to measure the success of the events? Or, I mean, because $6,600, is there a way of us gauging that? Are we going to task Leisure Services to say, hey, this event we broke even, this one we didn't, just so that we can at some point circle back around and say, hey, this event's not really paying for it. I just want to make sure that it is a benefit. I agree with you. I love having them, and I think it's a benefit for the city. But at some point, I just think I'd like to evaluate the events and just make sure we're being good stewards.
I think that is a very fair question and a great question. Metrics are very important anytime you're looking at financial obligation. In light of the new events that we've had, in most cases we've only had one so far, right. And I think that as we progress, people are starting to get excited and to talk about them as sponsors, and ultimately, certainly my goal as mayor is to try to push the events forward in a way that business owners and private enterprise will want to get involved and at some point completely take it from us. That's my ultimate goal. But then again, in the beginning, just getting started, one of the things that people in Lynn Haven have said to me over and over is how important it is to them not to have to be in traffic and driving to the beach and not to be going to these other cities when we can, be here. And so there are some metrics that are immeasurable, if that makes sense, just
sure.
the value. We know that having local events, local parks, places that we can go, it increases Lynn Haven's metrics across the state as a safe place to be, a family-friendly place to be, a place you want to live and raise your family, a place you might want to come and open a business, all those things. So there are a lot of immeasurable or unmeasurable metrics, but I hear your point, and I think that at some point we'll need to get to the point that the city would not be obligated to a large share of the money, that it would be outside vendors and businesses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I may, I'm heavily involved with the Mardi Gras at the Beach and the Pirate Festival at Pier Park. And what the TDC does is they hire a company to come in and walk through and interview the people out there, obviously making sure they're spending the money in the right place. And that may be something to consider, not necessarily now, but in the future, hiring a company to go through and survey people.
That's a fabulous idea as well. Anyone else? Oh, and since we're in the public, Commissioner Tender, do you have any objections to it being on Florida Avenue?
Absolutely not.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, of course she
Awesome.
doesn't.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the public regarding this resolution? Okay. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think that was a great move for Lynn Haven. Item number 12. This is the discussion and possible action regarding the city manager vacancy. And please help me with this, Mr. Attorney, if I go in the wrong direction, but I think what we're looking for here is a motion and a second in regard to the 8 candidates that we selected this evening to interview and consider further for the position of city manager, which is being vacated by our current city manager who's taking a position with Bay County. And then in addition to approving going forward with these 8 finalists in interviews, we would be also agreeing to these interviews taking place this Thursday, July the 29th, in separate personal interviews with each of the commissioners under the same roof but not in the same room, and not conferring with one another about the candidates, and then meeting here at 5 o'clock on Thursday for a public meeting where you, the public, would have an opportunity to ask questions of these candidates in public view, and then we as a commission would move forward in making a recommendation for a candidate for the commission meeting coming up on July 11th. Did I get all that in there? Or did I say something incorrectly? Please help me.
I think that as a result of the workshop today, there were 8 names that the commission decided to interview. Those are Michael White, Jeff Wilkins, Tim Bennett, Ben Newhouse, Larry Newsom, Dale Walker, Ryan Davis, and Pamela Hiller. And the commission has a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion from the commission? And there is none. Any questions from the public about this process or anything?
And then the second part would be to schedule a special commission meeting Thursday afternoon at 5 o'clock to discuss the city manager position.
So do we need a motion and a second for that one as well?
So
Okay.
Moved.
Second.
It would be this Thursday, 3 days from now. Yes. And I do want to mention as we move forward the timeline for this. We're trying to move it forward because our city commissioner is vacating the position on July 18th, but we also want to make sure that we notify the public that this meeting is happening Thursday afternoon at 5 o'clock. Okay. Okay. Any further questions or discussion? We did a motion and a second on the list of names, and then we did a motion and a second to have the public meeting at 5 o'clock. Can we vote for them concurrently, or do we have to do them separately? Okay, so we would have a concurrent vote on those 2 motions, that we would approve this list of 8, and that we would have this public meeting on Thursday, June 29th at 5 p.m. I don't know why I keep saying July, sorry. Okay, any further? Would you approach the podium, sir? Thank you. No problem. If you would just state your name and address for us and ask them.
Matt Kelly, 1503 East 14th Court.
Thank you.
I guess where I'm coming from this is it's like y'all did the alcohol thing, and I found out afterwards. You want to do a city commission or a city manager, and you just pulled the names out that y'all want to interview, and yet you want the public to show up 2 days from now, and we've got a holiday weekend coming up. It's kind of why I showed up today. Heard Mr. Barnes talking about getting the baseball teams here. I know that I'm going all over the place at this point. Came to Walter Kelly 10 years ago when I moved here. And
Sir,
said,
if you'll keep your comments just to this motion.
Okay, then I just think-
Okay,
okay.
hold on one sec. You can come back during public commentary and address any of the others that you'd
Okay.
like, but just for protocol, if you'd stay with this motion.
Okay, for this one.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I just think that y'all figured out the 8 names today, and you want to come back in 2 days and have a public forum on this. I just don't think it gives the public enough time. I don't think it's fair to the public in the city of Lynn Haven,
Okay,
especially for such a very important position.
okay. Your comment is duly noted. Would anyone
Okay, thank you.
Would anybody on the commission like to comment? I would be pleased to comment because I do appreciate what you're saying. As far as some of the others, the city website puts up the agenda every time there's a meeting, so it's not like, it's not a
Understand.
unseen. And I do hear what you're saying, that the 29th is just 2 days from now. This is just you don't have to agree with me. I'm just, but I do want to answer your question. If you want to come to that meeting, you certainly may come and ask questions. If there are questions that you would like to ask, if there's something that you want to ask, you can also, if you're not able to attend, you could let someone else know and they could ask those questions. We're not going to select the city manager this Thursday. This is it's an interview day, and then it's sort of a time, if you wanted to come and interview a candidate, you may. But then at the commission meeting, which will be the regularly scheduled one on July the 11th, that's when we'll be selecting the city manager. So at that time, when you have heard what you hear about the candidates, we'll make as much public as we possibly can, and we've put it on the news. And you had some objection that you wanted to bring forward, there's still an opportunity to stop that vote at that time if you brought enough, if enough people objected or there was a problem. So it's not that we're trying to push anything through in a hurry. It's just for connectivity from one city manager to the next. We wanted to let this new person who comes in have some time with this manager before he leaves. So we're just trying to do, in our view, what is best for the city, and hopefully that hasn't been offensive to anyone. So that's our desire, not to try and slip something past,
Oh,
but
no, I understand.
but just to try and do something in an
The city manager
expedient.
was leaving a while
Yes.
ago, too.
Not really very long. We've
Okay.
not had a lot of, just within, actually less than 2 months. It's just within his contractual. And then having to have all the legalities of how many days you have to advertise and that kind of thing. So
Well, thank
I
you.
hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could?
Sure.
If I could just add to the public, if anyone would like to give us input, or I'll just speak for myself, please feel free to email, call, home phone number, whatever email that the city has. The city does a great job of communicating messages to us. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerned about what you would like to see in a city manager, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll take those under consideration during the interview process. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Mr. Schultz. I live at Pennsylvania Avenue. You guys are going to advertise this in the paper so the public knows about it, right?
Yes.
I mean, the paper, the News Herald?
The attorney says it's not going to make the paper in time. We're at Tuesday, past Thursday deadline? We can make an attempt. We can make an attempt, but I can't promise.
You're required by law, are you not?
We're required to
No, you're not.
advertise.
Well,
We're not required to advertise special meetings in the newspaper. They're supposed to be required to give public notice. So my recommendation, as it would be for any kind of meeting, we put it on the website, post it on the City Commission room. We, of course, were talking about it today and getting it out to the public that way.
And I'll make an
Special
attempt
meeting.
also with a couple of the radio, I'm going to be on the radio station talking about the 4th of July with a couple of other different, radio DJs, and I'll try to put it out there as I'm doing that as well to get some more. We'll do everything we possibly can to get the information out to as many people as possible. That's our desire. It's my desire for sure. And I'm sure everyone else on the commission. Anyone else have a comment or a question? Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so the motion has passed. And then moving on to item number 13, this is a discussion with possible action regarding stop signs in the city. And actually, the News Herald did come and interview me after the last meeting when I mentioned that I had some concerns about stop signs and that I had met with the police chief and spoken with him about them. And because of the complaints that I've gotten really over the past 2 years, just as I've been mayor, and I'm sure that many of you maybe on the commission have had some of the same kinds of conversations with residents. But basically, what I did was bring before the city manager my ideas about the stop signs, and I believe that Roy with our Public Works Department has created a map that shows where I would like and the other residents would like for these to be. And in kind of tandem with that, as we look at this possible action, included in the packet for tonight, ladies and gentlemen of the board, there is a copy of the old ordinance for the city of the process that one has to go through, specific design criteria for four-way stops or for speed bumps or other speeding deterrents in our city. And not being disrespectful, but it's a very archaic process, and I had to go through it myself twice several years ago to try and get just one stop sign placed on my street to try and stop some of the traffic that was going through. So I just wanted to share a couple of things with you that I've been through personally and also what residents have told me. So two of the streets, full disclosure, affect me personally, but they also affect all those neighbors that I've known for many years who live around me. So I'm representing not only my own person, but those around me on those two streets. And those would be 5th Street, as we were talking earlier about the Bailey Bridge issue. So coming off of Bailey Bridge, many people who don't live in Lynn Haven, who are trying to get to the beach, tourists or going to work, or even trucks hauling soft drinks and that kind of thing, will turn right on 5th Street and speed down 5th Street at large amounts of speed. And so I've had a request from residents to place a stop sign at Georgia and 5th. That was one of the first that you just sort of deter people from thinking they can just speed down that street. And then when they get to Tennessee Avenue, they turn left because that goes directly to 390. And they leave that stop sign, and by the time they pass my house at the corner of 6th and Tennessee, some of them are at upwards of 45 and 50 miles per hour before they get to the next stop sign. What I will say is that finally, after it took 8 years to get one stop sign for me through all this, having to get a petition signed and doing this, that, and the other, until I finally found that there's a Florida statute which just replaces basically all of this. The Florida statute states, and it's Florida statute, I wrote it down, 316-006.2, letter A, that a municipal commission, board, and mayor have the authority to put in place any traffic signals, stop signs, whatever we need on our streets, not the county or the state, but on our municipal streets that we deem necessary for public safety. So we have that authority. We don't have to go through all of the, as I know I talk about studies, but we don't have to go through all of that. So what I'm asking the commission tonight, do we have that map available this evening? Do we have it? Yes. If you look above, and it's hard to see, but I'll just kind of go through it. Complaints from residents on Colorado Avenue, where people are turning off of 390 to get to the country club, and there are large high speeds on that road. Also, where I just pointed out on 5th Street in Georgia, and then on Tennessee, the one stop sign has helped a lot, but we think that one or two more would do a lot more good. And then over on 17th Street, where Kane Griffin Park is, a lot of children are playing there. There's a lot of activity there, and people are still, we've placed the flashing sign there. It's not doing a great deal of good. So, and I think I've covered them all. Those were the ones that I had listed. But we have, we have plenty of stop signs. I checked, we have about 25 available right now in the city, and it's just a matter of our just installing them with the commission's approval. When I spoke with our police chief, again, and with all due respect to him, he's spoken to me when I asked, what would you like to have at the police department, if money were no object and we could do it. He said, if he had 4 people on traffic patrol, he could do a lot more. And I certainly agree with that. And I also agree with the argument, well, we can put up those stop signs, but, there may not be anybody there to warn or ticket those who don't stop. But I think the more reminders that we have in our community, our entire city, we just talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the golf cart ordinances in our city. Most of Lynn Haven has a 25-mile-per-hour posted speed limit. Our children and our senior citizens and others that are more at risk than most of us should be safe with those kinds of speed limits. It should do it. But even if the stop sign just makes people think, and I also put forth in the newspaper, I don't want Lynn Haven to be seen as a speed trap. I don't want people thinking that, because we don't, when we issue citations, there's not a great deal of money made for the city of Lynn Haven. It goes to other places. But just, the police, when a policeman turns that flashing blue light on, whether they stop me or not, if they turn that light on and they point their finger at me that I did, it strikes terror in my heart. And so I just think that if we had those stop signs and we get as much police presence out there and just warning people, please slow down. This is our town. And I don't know about you, but it makes me really angry when I'm sitting in that center lane out here on 77 and people come off that bridge at 50 miles per hour and nearly blow the mirrors off my car when I'm trying to turn left. They don't have the right to drive through our town like that. And they don't have the right to drive through our neighborhoods that way. And I don't appreciate it, and I hope that most of you feel the same way. So anyway, that's my soapbox commission. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be so long-winded, but I feel very passionate about it. And I know there's also been the argument, well, if people don't know there's a stop sign there, it might cause more harm than good. And Public Works has talked about that they can have the little signs that warn, there's a stop sign coming, just to let people know that, this is something new, please stop. So this would be a start. I think that we'll get more requests for this. If we see fit to pass it today, I think you're going to hear more neighborhoods saying, yes, I want some of those too. And in speaking with one of our city engineers who works with subdivisions, he says many times in the new subdivisions or the gated communities, they place stop signs within those as they see fit, just to make the neighborhood safe. So that's my spiel, and if I could have a possible motion and second and some discussion, I would appreciate it, and I think that the citizens might as well.
I make the motion.
I'll second it for the sake of discussion.
If I can just, Mayor, if I can, what is the motion? Is it to put 6 stop signs up
Yes,
Well,
it's possible action, so it might be that they just say that we would look at it more closely. I don't know what their motion would be. It's just discussion and discussion and.
Well, that's where part of my question is, because you mentioned Georgia and 5th, and that's not even showing up on this map.
Well, that would be an error, so it should be.
Yeah, the one that's showing up is 6th and Tennessee.
Right.
There's nothing on 5th in Georgia. So that's my question is, how many stop signs are we talking about, and where exactly are we talking about putting them?
The map is not in front of me. I was hoping that we were going to have hard copies. I apologize. But there's, I was asking for my neighborhood, I was asking for 12th and 6th on Tennessee is what I was asking for. And then the residents were asking on 5th Street for one at Georgia. And then the placement on 17th Street, what I said to Public Works, just someplace near the park that would cause people, where kids are, that they would think about slowing down. And I apologize, I don't have the hard
No,
copy.
you're fine, because it's not showing any stop signs at all on 17th, going toward King Griffin.
Oh, well.
Yeah, there's a four-way already there, but I'm talking.
We were talking about an
putting
additional
new
one.
stop signs. And there's no new stop signs listed on 17th.
And I think that the motion, Dan, the reason it's not showing a location, I think it's just that we just feel that we need another one, but, looking at it and seeing where the most expedient place to put it is. We talked about maybe around that curve there by that subdivision, the entrance to, when you come around the curve from the east, that there's a kind of a blind spot there, that maybe a street or two past that. So just looking at, would we entertain doing this at these places?
For me to vote yes, I've got to know where the intersections are going to be. And
I feel badly that the map is incorrect. I really do.
Then I would suggest tabling it till we get more information.
Mayor, if I may?
Okay. I'll accept that because the map is incorrect. And the map I saw earlier had it delineated correctly, so I apologize. And no offense to the city workers who did this, it's just a mistake on the map. So we'll get it right for the next meeting.
Mayor, for sake of
I'm
discussion,
sorry,
if
go
I
ahead.
could. Thank you, Mayor. I would just like, I just think this is a good opportunity to bring up, that we do have the policy. I understand it's complicated. I would like to see us rework the policy. It's kind of old. I totally agree with some of the locations that you've pointed out. When I was out doing work on golf carts, I did hear about stop signs, especially at Tennessee and 12th. But I just would like to use this as an opportunity to say, hey, let's if it takes a workshop, let's do a workshop. Let's work through this policy and adjust the policy to fit maybe the current needs. In the policy, then, I think we should outline that the commission can make the individual decisions based on the Florida statute, as you pointed out. So, but I like a policy, I like a guideline, and I just think that we could just use this opportunity to do that. So if we don't pass it tonight, then I would probably make the motion that we set a workshop to review the traffic calming policy as a whole and all come back together and create that policy, or revise the policy that we currently
I appreciate that, and I just wanted, though, to make one more comment about the policy that we have right now. I mean, it's page after page after page long, and you have to get dozens upon dozens of signatures in your neighborhood, and it's very time-consuming, and it's when Florida statute just covers it in one sentence. So I would love if we could work towards making it more expedient for our residents.
And I don't disagree with that at all, and that's what I'd like to discuss during the workshop and maybe reduce some of that. And some of the things, when I reviewed the policy, and I've discussed the policy with residents as well, and like one of the things, minimum volumes, 300 cars, and so those are the types of things that I think if we had an opportunity as a commission to take the policy away, hear from the residents, make adjustments, suggestions, maybe less people on the petition. I've heard that for speed bumps, for instance. Then we bring that back to a workshop at the table and say, hey, this is what I heard from the residents, and this is the change I'd like to have to the policy.
Okay.
And I'll agree to that, and I totally understand. I'm one of the biggest supporters of safety in this community. My concern is that if everybody comes before the commission and wants a stop sign, we're going to have too many stop signs around this city. And I think it's going to be the opposite effect of what we're trying to accomplish. And I agree with Commissioner Friend is that, we need to massage the policy a little bit. We need to make it more updated. And there needs to be some criteria, some steps that need to be followed before we just start throwing stop signs out there. So I totally agree with that, and I will support that motion. I'll second it.
Thank you. I appreciate both of your comments, and I do want to reiterate again, with all due respect, what I was proposing tonight was not just throwing stop signs out there. I did have specific places, and there was a map prepared. Unfortunately, the hard copies didn't appear, and we couldn't see them up there. But they were specific places, and they were places that residents felt they needed them. And but I see where we're headed, that we've had 3 commissioners speak that they'd like to take it forward to another date. So in the midst of having a date right now for selecting a city manager, I would just say that maybe just table this until the next meeting, and then we can look at the calendar beyond that and maybe find a date for a workshop if that's agreeable with everyone. Is that agreeable to everyone? Okay.
I think you got two motions you've got to deal with, though.
I hadn't gotten there yet. I'm moving along, gentlemen. So I would, at this point, ask the commissioner who made the motion, Commissioner Tender, if she would be willing to withdraw the motion.
I withdraw it.
And I'll withdraw the second.
Okay, so the motion and the second are withdrawn, and I do appreciate the fact that you made the motion and the second so that we could discuss it. And we will consider this tabled, and I will ask to have it put on the agenda again at either the next meeting or the meeting after that so that we could go forward in discussing. Do I need one to table? We withdrew the motion.
This one, but you've got another motion over there.
Commissioner Friend made a motion to, I don't think he made a motion, you just suggested that we have a workshop.
I did suggest the motion.
Okay.
But we
didn't make
we
a
do
motion.
have the item as an agenda item, so, we could, I could
Would you
make the
like to make a
to-
motion for a workshop and give us a possible date? Or do you want to?
Well, I might would go beyond that, to be honest, the more we discuss it. I would make a motion that we have a workshop to review the current policy, traffic calming policy, which also includes stop signs. Within that motion, I'd also petition the commission to consider Tennessee and 12th immediately exercising our right to do at least that one stop sign now that's been clearly identified, I think, by multiple people probably, to get that one done, and then just have staff work out the date of the workshop.
And I appreciate that, but and I also add to that, Commissioner Friend, that at that intersection, you're talking about the 12th and Tennessee, there is also a sign in either direction that says dangerous intersection before you get to it, but there's no stop sign, so that's kind of, but thank you for that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So there's been a motion and a second that we table that we plan a workshop for a future date for discussing alternate or changes to the policy that we have in place, and we're not saying a specific date, but we will have one, and that we would immediately place a stop sign on Tennessee and 12th.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I add one thing to that? Can we also task staff to look for policies to bring back to us so that we can kind of have some direction as we develop this new policy?
Sure.
Is that okay?
If we need to direct staff for that, sure. Yes.
Okay. Would you like to amend your motion?
Yes, ma'am. I'll just start over. As it relates to the stop signs, I'd like to make a motion that we have a workshop in the future to be determined by staff that fits in with the schedule. Also asking staff to bring other municipality traffic calming policies to the meeting or get them to us before the workshop so we can look over those and take into consideration during the workshop. And I'd also like to say that we exercise our authority within the Florida statute to immediately place a stop sign at 12th and Tennessee. That is my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the board? The only discussion, if I could add one more thing, is that in tasking staff, when you're saying bringing in other, my intent is certainly not to bring in any additional ordinances on top of what we already have. My intent was that we simplify by just moving to what Florida statute says. So,
And that's not my intent. My intent is to use that data so that we can put it into this and make it a little bit better than what we have.
perfect.
Mayor?
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
Do you mind if I may, I mean, just listening to the conversation, I might be able to bring, I would be able to bring a draft, and I don't know that it wouldn't be easier just to start over with something more simple and not as heavy as this, but to that workshop, a proposed product based on the research from other cities, based on what's been discussed tonight.
But I think the intent of Commissioner Friend, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I think his intent was that we not destroy or do away with our policy until we look at it more closely. Was that your intent, that we not start with something new until we've looked at the old and see what we want to throw out? I'm not saying that I agree with all that, but I want to keep the intent of your motion there.
Yeah, any material that we can get to measure it up to ours would be certainly beneficial.
So if you wanted to draft something else to bring in your spare time as you're getting ready to leave the city, we would be most thankful for that.
I wasn't going to mention that.
Okay. So we've had a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any from the audience on this? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Brenda Roberts, Humphrey, Lister. I'm the old Roberts. Now, I don't know why I told you that, but I just want you to know I love Lynn Haven, and I thank each of you so much for all the work you do every day. I live at 1306 New York Avenue, and that is the busiest road, if you can imagine. Remember that guy that was walking one afternoon and was hit by a car? Y'all, that's the craziest place in the world for people. They use it as a shortcut to avoid the traffic light. They're at 390 in Ohio. It's terrible. So I'm here for that purpose, just to please put that on your list of things to consider. Okay,
Thank you very much.
To clarify, she, as you're traveling east on 390, she is the last road that you can cut off to miss Ohio. And that's why her road gets so much traffic.
Yes. And one of the other streets that that I had a request was right there, kind of in that same vicinity. It's the corner of Georgia and 13th. That was another place, you know, so that was supposed to be on the map as well.
Oh, no, the Georgia and 13th is.
Okay, perfect. Yep. Okay, so there's been a motion and a second. There's any other discussion from the public? Yes, sir. Sure. Sure, you have to come up, sorry. No problem.
How hard is it? Because I understand too, and I have kids that are young, and with like King Griffin, they have the four-way stop. But you're right, they just repaved it, and it's so easy to go faster than you should. So I could understand like a stop sign closer to the true part. Where a concern is, as a homeowner, but yet also as a businessman, how hard is it to change the length of the stop lights in Lynn Haven? Because that's poor. All of a sudden, I mean, and I know you probably have to do case studies, but all you have to do, and this is why they're going through your neighborhoods, this is why they're going through my neighborhoods, because like the corner of 390 and 77 still seems to have the same length of green and red, even if it's at the high point of the morning where everybody's trying to get to work and everybody's trying to get their kids to school, as it would at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or at 9 o'clock at night. So
A very legitimate point, and those are state and county roads. Again, they have to go through that, you know, that venue, is my understanding. The attorney or the city manager may have to.
Well, I can tell you the answer that I received, because I asked that same question a couple of years ago. And they basically base it on the morning traffic. And that's how they determine. Because I asked them, I said, you know, can't we change this somehow to make it a little bit better? And they said no, because you've got the traffic that's coming in through Lynn Haven. They're trying to get it to go through.
okay, so that's
But
what.
them is FDOT is what he's asking.
I mean,
it's not our.
Oh, no, I didn't. I was just wondering, because I know, like in Tallahassee, they're all synced together. I grew up in Tallahassee.
Yeah,
they're synced together. So if you start going down Tennessee Street, you kind of keep flowing down Tennessee Street. And I understand that we couldn't really be connected to Panama City, but it still seems like the length of the lights would change, because I know they do in other cities.
Mayor,
So,
I can add something.
And Commissioner Friend has something to add as well.
I might can bring a little good news to this.
Great.
Adaptive lighting is really what you're asking for. And at one point, there was some grant money for that, and the county was going to do that and apply for that, and I think they may have even got some. So I think we could see some changes in the near future, and we may have a good voice at the county pretty soon, too, to help out. But just saying, but it's adaptive lighting, and they are actively working to get that grant money to get the adaptive lighting in place for Lynn Haven. So, and I can follow up with that and report back at the next commission meeting if you like.
okay. And I'm all for the extra stops light.
Thank you.
Sides. I understand it, but
Awesome.
on the other hand, that's where I was also, I know y'all have been out there too. And all of a sudden in the morning, 77 traffic goes all the way back, 10 roads back, so everybody starts cutting through.
You're correct.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
But
Anyone
now-
else?
Yeah, just a quick correction.
Yes, sir.
Just so he knows, correct me if I'm wrong, the county and state maintain those lights. We have no control over them, correct?
That's right.
Just so you know that the city commission has no control over those lights. That's a county and state issue, unfortunately.
We said that.
Okay, I missed that part of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Commissioner Friend has been on TPO for some time, and then I'm going to be joining him tomorrow, so we'll have two voices there as well, and then City Manager Schubert will be working for the county, so maybe we can make enough noise to get something going. We'll see. Okay, so moving on.
Change my number.
We have not yet voted on the discussion and possible action regarding stop signs, so I won't make him repeat it again. It's been, we've had a motion and a second. So Mr. Schubert, if you would please call the roll. There's no further discussion about this motion. Okay, go ahead.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, we've had a great meeting. We're at item number 14. This is our public commentary. If there's any thing that you would like to discuss that has not been brought up or any issues that you have, we'll listen at this time. Mr. Miller. We're delighted to see you here, by the way.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Leon Miller, 1508 Mississippi Avenue. I just have 2 or 3 questions I need to ask. A while back, there was a fire in the incorporated area off of 17th Street. Is there any way the commissioners could ask the county to put a fire hydrant around the Michigan and 17th Street area to help the an incorporated area if another fire break out in that area?
So your question is, can the county...
Could you ask the county to do that?
If we could confer with the county about the possibility of placing another fire hydrant near the unincorporated neighborhood near 17th Street to answer their issues.
Yes.
May I task Mr. Schubert with,
Sure.
with that?
Okay. The sidewalks on 390, who is responsible now since Lynn Haven have the linkers, their responsibility of there? The sidewalks is just being covered by grass on 390 from behind the drugstore all the way down there. Behind
CVS,
yeah.
In that way? The county was responsible, and now the state, is that the correct answer? Now
Well, it need cutting real bad.
So I should have told him that the other day, sorry. I'll get him on the next meeting.
I've had several people in the community talk about the direction to get to the Afro-American cemetery down there. Could you look into the possibility of putting signs up down there directing people to how to get to the cemetery?
To the Lynn Haven Cemetery there,
Yeah.
on Mount Hope Cemetery. Commissioner Tender, yes.
I agree with you completely. I circled down there for, I swear, 20 minutes to find that cemetery in regards to the tree that I talked about earlier. And I kept circling and circling, and I'm going, I had good directions. They said come down Delaware, and I was going to find it. After the 5th time I went around, there is an 8x10, this small, an 8x10 sign that has the cemetery name on it. And I agree with you completely. We need a much bigger sign there.
Thank you. And the last thing is, I know I talked to the city manager about the sign at Kane Griffin Park, and he sent me the directions of the new signs that's going to go up. And I just want to say thanks, and as soon as they get up, I think the people in this community will be proud. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're so proud that you're in better health. Here. Anyone else have something for the good of the cause this evening?
Mayor, can I just add one thing
Yes, you may.
since we're piling on DOT? When the mayor and I met with them last week, too, we also did discuss with them, and this has been an issue for a long time, a right turn lane coming north off 77 into the post office, and they said they would look at that. So we'll be following up on that again, and then also about the possibility of dredging on some of these roads that 77 certainly contributes, or there's state roads that contribute into putting some murking up the canal and putting sediment in the canal, seeing if they would partner with us in potentially dredging some of that. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yep, out of some of our pristine, beautiful bayous, cleaning them up. That'd be great. Anybody else on the commission have anything for the good of the cause? We're all done? Anybody else from the public? It's been a great meeting. Thank you all for coming, and have a great 4th of July. Don't forget to come to Lynn Haven. We're going to have the best celebration ever. Thank you.